Watch and learn how Will coaches his students how to better jump on skis by perfecting their pops.
Bouncy, bouncy, bouncy. Extension up! I'm Will, one of the Stompit coaches. We're here in Hintertux, Austria. First day of the Freestyle camp, and we're working on popping. The most important thing about popping, okay, for me is that we use the whole body. It's really common on skis with people learning, maybe not you guys at all, but to see people going off jumps and just lifting their legs like this, okay? Essentially taking all the power out of the pop, okay? So really important that when we pop, we also lift our shoulders. So we're here in a nice strong ski position and we're lifting our shoulders to here and back. Cool. So another thing that's really common when we're doing our first jumps on skis is that people jump from quite a flat foot, okay? When we pop, and you're all doing it now, we kind of jump a little bit more from the toes, right? So let's all practice now, jumping just 1 foot forwards, okay? So we're really projecting everything a little bit forwards. Good, awesome. So little thing for you, Aaron, is that you're looking down when you're popping. Really important, this is for everyone. When we get to jumping, our eyes are what control our balance, right? And the further ahead we can look, the more balance we're gonna feel. Okay, so let's really get in the habit already of trying to look as far ahead as possible. Let's do this, crew. Little nervous, okay. One little tip that I found really helps people with a little bit of nerves riding into the jump is to do a little bit of bouncing in the front of the ski boots on the way in, okay? Because being a little bit nervous usually makes us quite stiff. Big jumper. Whee! Cool, that's tomorrow. Bit of bouncing. Awesome! Kevin, that was a lovely pop on the last one. Nice! Woo! Okay, a couple of little points. Peter, you're popping really nicely, but you're popping a little bit more from a flat foot, okay? Which means you're going with the momentum of the jump a little bit more, okay? And on, especially the second jump, I think it was, you definitely landed a little bit more on the backs of the skis. Okay, you can kind of get away with that here, but when we go onto a bigger jump, if your weight's back, it's not going to go too nicely. So I want to think a little bit more about projecting everything forwards. Okay, jumping a little bit more from the toes and trying to land with the shin pressure. Okay, take off with the shin pressure, land with the shin pressure. Whoa, cool. You guys all see that with the landing a little bit more on the tails? Cool.
So here's something we quite often see, that people land on the tails. And imagine if you do a 360, often this tendency to land on the tails gets even more extreme, leading to even a back slap that could lead to injury. So it's so important, or even critical, to nail the pop so that we avoid back-seated landings and that we stomp the landing with some chin pressure, or even what we call sometimes a 4-point landing, with a pulse in the ground like this, and you're just so much more stable in the air feeling confident. But it's very hard to do and often requires many attempts on tiny jumps where you have no fear at all.
Cool. Slightly wider stance, full extension, really nice and tall. Okay? Good luck. Bouncy, bouncy, bouncy. Extension up!
Let's compare Will skiing with our guest. So Will got this wonderful pop. When he skis into the jump, he has his legs slightly bent, but they're quite straight, but slightly bent. So you can still sink down a little bit deeper just as he approaches the jump. And then he fully extends the legs just by the end of the lip. So he brings that hip forward and the whole body tips forward so he lands perfectly perpendicular to the landing with some shin pressure. Although our camp guest improved a lot, there's still some work to be done, and let's compare to Will. So this gentleman here skis in with slightly bent legs, but he looks a little bit tall. But it's quite a good place to be because he can sink down a little deeper just as he approaches the jump and manages to fully extend by the end of the jump. Wonderful pop. You can see how he moves nicely forward and lands pretty much perfectly perpendicular to the jump. But to be nitpicky, could probably move a couple of degrees further forwards.
Yeah, that was much better.
Here's a typical case of someone who rides into the jump sitting down too deep too early. So if you would squash any deeper, he'll be back seated. It makes it very hard to do a good pop. But as we'll see, he does quite a good job anyway. And an advice for him is to also land with the legs a little bit straighter so you can use more range of motion as shock absorbers.
Whoa!
But as we can see, it's very hard to learn to pop and it takes a long time to nail it.
We've had an awesome day here in Hintertux on the glacier. Everyone's definitely improved, at least in one way or another. Hopefully you've learned something too from tagging along with us. And if you'd like to join a camp, we've got camps in Lax throughout the winter and back here in Hintertux at the start of next season. So hopefully see you there.